Another day, another media scandal, this time involving anti-white racism? We're going to break down the latest media controversy, this time involving the New Yorker, and so much more on today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, where we take on the craziest ideas from across the internet, our media, and our politics, all from an independent perspective. Up first, guys, we're going to talk about this really crazy saga that I've been watching unfold online and just kind of sipping my tea as it spices up and gets heated, involving a staff writer for the New Yorker, a woman who is named Doreen St. Felix, who she's in the spotlight right now in the crosshairs of conservative critics because she wrote a kind of strange article about the Sydney Sweeney controversy. Remember the jeans commercial that had woke TikTok melting down and crying about eugenics and Nazi rhetoric and all of that? Yeah, we covered it extensively on the show.
You guys are complaining about that Sydney Sweeney jeans ad, so I went and saw it. That's Nazi propaganda.
Well, she wrote an article about this titled The Banal Provocation of Sydney Sweeney's Jeans. And this article kind of waffled between whether it was really that big a deal or not, and was very kind of flowery, typical New Yorker style, but it did include a few bizarre lines, like when she talked about the trashy dog whistle atmosphere and the adoring legion of Sydney Sweeney fans, the most extreme of whom want to recruit her as kind of a, quote, Aryan princess. My favorite part of the article was one that actually went under the radar, where she says, to be clear, many of us, the N-words, the queers, the hairy feminists, etc., do not react out of a feeling of personal injury, as if the blondness as beauty standard has terrorized us. Whom does that standard terrorize more than white cis women? Honestly. So the article was actually strange. Like, it wasn't even exactly what you would expect in terms of like woke criticism, but it had some strange takes and oddball remarks in it for sure. But anyway, conservative critics really did not like this depiction of Sydney Sweeney as, in the views of some, an Aryan princess, calling her like a Nazi princess or whatever. And just the general tenor of the article I found rather obnoxious, but totally in keeping with the New Yorker and their kind of faux intellectual style and the way that this young woman seems to present herself. There's a certain ethos, you've encountered it if you went to a liberal university, if you grew up in like New England or anywhere like that, of kind of the pretentious for its own sake liberal who kind of over intellectualizes things for no real reason other than to kind of make themselves seem smarter and more profound than they actually are. This woman, Doreen St. Felix, very much falls into that category. I want to play you guys a quick clip of her I found on YouTube answering basic questions in the most like obnoxious way imaginable, or at least the most pretentious way imaginable. Listen to this.
How did you begin?
Upside down.
What is the shape of your mind?
Hexagon.
How will you live now?
I will live very slowly.
What are you most sure of?
I'm most sure of when I'll eat dinner.
What are the consequences of silence?
More silence.
What will people mourn most when you're gone?
My macaroni and cheese.
Who should take responsibility?
You should and I should.
Is history fair?
History is constant.
Oh, I'm getting shivers because this just reminds me of some of my family members. Extended family members I'm not the most fond of. But anyway, guys, she is now getting pretty brutally targeted by a right-wing outrage mob, but outraged for some legitimate reasons. They've essentially dug up tons. It's not just a couple, but like tons of very explicit anti-white racist tweets from this woman from about 2015 when she would have been about 23 years old. And they're demanding that the New Yorker hold her accountable for this. And so far, they haven't. Shocker. Plot twist. Now, I am going to read you guys. I'm going to do a dramatic reading of some of these old tweets before I give my take on the whole controversy and explain the fallout and everything else. Okay, guys, let's read those tweets, at least some of my favorites that I selected from you, because, I mean, they are despicable. Like, they're really bad, but they're also funny. I'm sorry. She tweeted, "It's not you, white people, per se, but it's everything that protects you so it can kill me. It's not your face, but it is so much your face." She just like thinks she's so profound, and she's really not. She just tweeted, of course, in 2015, "It's really gonna suck when we have a white president again." What? Just the explicit racism is quite something. I mean, you don't even have to play the swap the races game to see how bad this is. Anyway, white terrorism is a redundant phrase. Oh? Oh. Not all terrorism, or even, I would wager to say most terrorism, is in fact associated with white people, but okay. Now, this one, I have no idea what the context is, but I just find it very funny. This White Squad commercial. I am tired of your satire, your hoppy beers, your mediocre dick. Just like leave, please. Not her saying all white men have mediocre, you know what. I don't know, did she get dumped by a white man? That's what it's giving to me. It's giving that. She also has this like very bizarre obsession with white people's hygiene, or in her perception, the lack thereof. So she wrote in a tweet, "White people who literally started a plague because they couldn't wash their asses need never say they taught black people hygiene." I'm not sure that is in fact a historically correct recollection of the bubonic plague. And also, listen, human hygiene in history was pretty bleak, and not just in places with white people. It's just weird. Now, this is my favorite. Of course, white people don't bathe. It's in their blood. Their lack of hygiene literally started the bubonic plague, lice, syphilis, etc. Excuse me? Not bathing is in our blood? I don't know any white people that don't bathe. Well, I don't really know any people that don't bathe. I know a couple, but I actually try to associate with them as little as possible, and it has nothing to do with race. Just a kind of sad. It's a kind of sad and twisted way to look at the world, this. Don't you think? Like, obviously this comes off as extremely bigoted and hateful, but it also comes off as like a person who's really sad and adrift and resentful and hateful and not great. This one as well. "Middle-class white people think hospitals are places to go when you're sick, that the police are who to go to when you need safety." Yes? Question mark? Where do you go when you're sick? Who do you call when you get grimed? Like, it's just funny because actually, middle-class white people aren't the ones that think this. Most racial minorities think this. In fact, only the elite racial minorities who go to woke colleges and get brainwashed don't think this. Your average black or Hispanic person wants more police in their neighborhood, not less. But go off, queen. So, of course, after these tweets were brought to light by the right-wing activist Christopher Rufo, Doreen St. Felix apologized and explained that, listen, she was just an angsty early 20-something. She'd been to one too many slam poetry readings. But of course, she doesn't hate white people. She apologizes for her remarks, and this doesn't represent who she is nearly a decade later. Just kidding. None of that happened. None of that happened whatsoever. Now, we do know that according to the New York Post, she has deleted her X account entirely and all the posts about hating white people and white men. A staffer for the New Yorker who denounced Sydney Sweeney as an Aryan princess has spouted anti-white and anti-Semitic rhetoric in social media posts before scrubbing her account after being called out on Friday. Doreen St. Felix, 33, had written several racist posts on X, the site formerly known as Twitter, including that, quote, "Whiteness fills me with a lot of hate," and that, quote, "The Holocaust is the worst thing to happen to black people." Side note, did the Holocaust happen to black people? I am confused. The unearthed inflammatory tweets date back to 2014, 3 years before the Haitian American journalist was hired by the left-leaning magazine run by longtime editor David Remnick. In one tweet targeting white men in December 2014, St. Felix wrote, "You all are the worst. Go nurse your effing Oedipal complexes and leave the earth to the browns and the women." Another tweet simply said, "I hate white men." The resurfaced messages revealed a pattern of racially charged commentary spanning multiple years. You could say that, New York Post. In fact, you could even say that that might be an understatement, calling this racially charged commentary. She also suggested that we lived in perfect harmony with the earth pre-whiteness and blamed environmental destruction specifically on white capitalism. Yes, the reason that China is emitting so much carbon emissions is because of that dastardly white capitalism. Her post also contained tone-deaf references to the Nazi slaughter of 6 million Jews. In one tweet, she described the Holocaust gesture, that's a quote, writing that it's trichnological when white people invoke the Holocaust because it allows them to step out of their whiteness and slip on fake oppression. Are white people who, like Jewish white people, for example, who cite the Holocaust, are they citing fake oppression? Wow. Interesting. Very interesting. I'm a little bit taken aback by some of these writings. Like, I've encountered a lot of this very explicit anti-white sentiment over the years, especially in my college days. But this is like pretty extreme even for that. Like, it's kind of a new level of some of this stuff that, I don't know, man. It seems to have bled over into her modern day work a little bit. Here's where things get controversial. The right-wing activists who dug this all up are essentially trying to cancel her. They're trying to get the New Yorker to fire her or to discipline her, or at least for her to publicly acknowledge and recognize and apologize for these posts. And I think they have a point, the Christopher Rufos of the world, when they point out the tremendous double standard here. There is no other group that a staff writer at the New Yorker could have been this racist to and not had to apologize. Frankly, if they had tweets like this about black people, they would have been fired years ago, and no apology would have been accepted or good enough for them to stay in their job. And with the New Yorker itself claiming quite explicitly to be an anti-racist institution and to have, equity and diversity and all this stuff, and to have like policed people, public figures and other people for their past writings and tried to get them in trouble for problematic past things they've said, I think it is totally, totally fair to call out the New Yorker here and point out their double standards and hypocrisy. That said, some of the right-wing critics here are definitely taking things too far. I see absolutely no need for a federal investigation into the New Yorker, as some have suggested. It's not that deep. And I also don't think this woman needs to be necessarily fired or canceled for life for what she wrote in her early 20s. I think she should apologize. I think she should acknowledge the posts, and she should explain how her thinking has changed. If she doesn't do that, I mean, that's fair game to call someone out. And I don't really think that's cancel culture, because to me, cancel culture is when you are discarding and punishing people in disproportionate ways for things from their past that often, in most of these like really egregious cancel culture cases, don't accurately represent who they are today. And there's no like path to redemption. But if you were just virulently racist and hateful and insane and never apologized or really acknowledged any evolution in your views, I mean, I think it's fair for people to question whether you should be, a media leader and a thought leader in the political and cultural space. I do think that's fair to question. And I don't think it's necessarily cancel culture, but I also can't accept the idea that there's no way she's got to go. No, we should, as a society and as a culture, have grace and compassion for people and allow them to apologize and acknowledge their mistakes and evolve. Now, maybe people like her don't afford that to the other side. Maybe the kind of liberal media cadre that she's a part of certainly didn't afford that to most people during the 2020s, early 2020s. But I don't believe that turnabout is fair play necessarily. I think you have to model the standards that you believe in and the principles, live and act out the principles that you believe in. And I don't believe in this merciless just totally toxic culture where if you made a mistake once, you've got to go, your head must roll. So I don't want to advocate that for someone else. But I absolutely think the criticism here is fair and that she should have to at least apologize and acknowledge this, not just quietly delete it and ignore the controversy. Or the New Yorker blocked Christopher Rufo as if that's going to just make this go away. It's not. It's not going to go away. And frankly, this kind of extreme ideology and sentiment, it's usually not this extreme. She's an outlier case, but this kind of crazy identitarian leftism is a lot more common in media circles than you might expect, because a lot of these media people, this kind of professional media class, come right out of liberal elite universities where this ideology is rampant, and they take it with them into the media institutions that then shape culture and political coverage. And I do think that is scandalous and in need of serious course correction. But what do you guys think? What do you think the right solution is for how to approach examples like this of hypocrisy, but we don't want to be cancel culture warriors ourselves? Let me know in the comments. Do make sure you're subscribed if you aren't yet. Hit that like button while you're at it. Remember, you can also listen to the Brad vs. Everyone podcast on audio podcast platforms for full episodes like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. And remember to send in your Voicemail Friday voicemails with your woke horror stories, your personal life scenarios you want advice on, or whatever questions you guys have for me. Okay, well, while we are talking about liberal media and its never-ending dysfunction, we're going to check in on the fine folks over at MSNBC because the liberal cable news network just announced a massive rebranding. It will no longer be known as MSNBC, and instead it will be known as MS Now? Here is Joe Scarborough announcing the new rebrand.
We will become MS Now, which stands for My Source for News, Opinion, and the World. And look, Andrew, they even have a graphic up. I like it.
There it is.
Actually,
the new logo.
It looks very sporty.
So this is so funny to me for so many reasons. First, I can't be the only one who thinks that with the logo there, it kind of looks like PMS Now. That just the shape kind of looks like a P, so then it's PMS Now. And then if it doesn't, then it kind of looks like Ms. Now. And then the full name, what does that even mean? My Source, News, Opinion, World. Like, it's not a good acronym even. Now, of course, they're doing this renaming because they are splitting with NBC. Now, personally, I would just keep the name because they've built up so much brand capital and branding around it. And I mean, it's not the worst name in the world, MSNBC, but people know what it is. I think this is just a terrible idea, but I find it funny and entertaining because I can tell you, they paid consultants probably millions of dollars, but at least thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars to come up with this Canva template looking ass logo and this really bad brand. Like, a brand is tough, a logo, a brand, a new network, a product. It's actually very difficult to do, but this is like a 2 out of 10. Like, it's actually bleak. And I do find it comical. There's also this weird thing that, like, when I see MS, I think of the disease. I think of multiple sclerosis. And now, like, MS Now is their main. That to me seems like a conflation that is going to muddle the branding. The marketing whiz Alulu Chen Mercer-Veni posted on X that this seems like a wasted opportunity because it forfeits brand equity without replacing it with anything better because it's so generic. MS Now could be an app, a charity, a cloud storage product. Initially, I thought it was a rebrand for MS OneDrive, and the new logo looks like it belongs to a Democratic PAC. Maybe they're doubling down on being an echo chamber, but puzzling choice if not. I agree, it actually does kind of look like Democrat branding, which, I mean, that part fits. Now, some liberal influencers online are like mad about this and they think it might be some form of like kowtowing to Trump or something, but I really don't think it's all that. But here is the Democratic strategist and influencer Oliviana Giuliana. Take a listen to her video.
This feels like a bad omen. This feels Trumpy to me. I really don't like what this represents for media. MSNBC was like the liberal news source. Like, we all know that. We have already seen what's happened with CNN And now this? That's why it's more important now than ever that you support independent journalists and independent publications.
Yeah, I think she's kind of worked up about nothing, which means it's a day that ends in Y. Because MSNBC, I could be wrong, but MSNBC is not about to get less liberal. It might get more. It's probably going to get more anti-Trump and more liberal. It's not going to get less. I'm sorry. That's not happening. That's not a thing. It's just like, what happened to CNN? What? CNN is still the resistance news network. Well, just now because they occasionally allow Scott Jennings on air, or they actually have him on a lot, to be fair, but they have a little bit of viewpoint diversity, or once in a blue moon, they'll book someone like me to go on a panel on one show. Yeah, it's still very much a liberal news network. So I don't even know what she's talking about. And this really has nothing to do with Trump. Again, it is about them breaking with NBC News and wanting to rebrand and choosing to do so in a way that is really bad. It's not a Trumpy thing. It's not a dark omen or anything like that. Okay, guys, you're going to be all right. What do you guys think? Had you seen this new logo? Do you have the same confusion / humor about it that I do? Let me know in the comments.